Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Lisa Louise Cooke of the Genealogy Gems podcast.
And I'm Diahan Southard, your DNA guide.
And we are here in New York City, and we are going to hopefully help you reveal your own unique story. We're going to do that with the help of Animoto, and Beth Forrester is here. Come here,
Come on,
Beth. Meet everyone. Beth is amazing. She's a professional photographer. She's invited us here to share what we do in family history. We're working on her to work on her own family history.
Yes.
And she's helping us to use Animoto to create amazing stories. So that's what this presentation is all about. So shall we get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So I thought I would just start out by telling you my own story. A lot of people have asked me, after 10 years of producing the podcast, how I got started in family history. And it was a long time ago. In fact, it was when I was a kid, about 8 years old. And I was visiting at my grandma's house. And I remember going to the back room and sitting down on the floor. And she had this floor-to-ceiling bookcase. But the bottom row were all these old, black, dusty scrapbooks. And I brought one. I brought it all the way to New York to show to you today because this is really where it all started for me. And when I opened the book, I think what shocked me was I didn't see all the Kodachrome pictures I was used to. Nothing was in color. And in fact, I didn't really recognize any of the faces either. And my grandmother was an avid photographer, and I loved looking at all her pictures. And these were things I'd just never seen before. So I headed out into the kitchen and I said, Grandma, what are these strangers doing in your book? And she lovingly took the time to sit down with me. She grabbed a piece of paper off of my grandfather's end table next to his big chair, the big chair, and this was it. And she started to write down who these people were. And she said, well, this is my family. I said, well, I'm your family. I know, but this was the family where I was born, and my mama and papa. And she started to write down the name, and she wrote Mama Mikolowski. And it's actually Nikolowski, but she was doing her best to remember the original German surname. In fact, her own surname, she was born as Sporowski, but she later became Sporin because they changed their name when her father became naturalized. So she wrote down everything that she could, and on the one hand, I became really just entranced by this story, but I was also a little surprised that there were gaps in it, that my amazing grandmother didn't have all the answers. And so I became really, really interested in, well, okay, I'll say obsessed with family history and finding the answers and filling in the gaps. And so that led to all of this. Lots and lots of documents and photos. And I have, here's documents. Here's great-grandfather Sporowski's naturalization papers. I spent a lifetime. In fact, I was the only kid in grade school using her allowance to find death certificates. Not too many kids were doing that. But it paid off because I got a lot of great information. I really started to fill in the story. Well, coming light years ahead, now to today, I'm still learning the story, but I'm also finding a whole new way to share that story. And that's what I want to share with you. So that was the story of my great-grandparents, the Sporowskis.
Amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
I mean, a lot different than piles of documents on my desk, and to have it come together like that. You know, it really strikes me that we are in such a unique position to resurrect these stories. I wonder if my grandparents ever thought that their story would be told again, and here we are doing it.
Well, that's the important thing, is that nobody thinks their story's worth telling. I've talked with a lot of people, and most people think, oh, it's not worth me telling my story. It's not that interesting. But that's a thing, and especially the thing that DNA really highlights is that all of us have DNA. Every single
Absolutely.
one.
And you know, I think right now, DNA is the welcome mat to family history. So without further ado, let's welcome everybody to DNA with Diahan Southard, your
Thank you,
DNA
Lisa.
guide.
Thank you. Right, so as Lisa said, DNA really is the welcome mat for family history. Thousands of people are being tested using services like Ancestry DNA, and for the first time they're deciding, this is something I want to know, something I'm interested in, I want to know about my history. And so it's a great opportunity for each of us to get personally involved in our own family history research using our DNA. So we're going to talk today in my first segment here about the basics of DNA testing. And then we're going to bring Lisa on, and she's going to talk a little tech tools. And then I'm going to come back, and we're going to do a little more in-depth look at your DNA test results. So without further ado, let's get started. So there's 3 different kinds of DNA tests you can take for family history. There's the Y DNA, which traces a direct male line, the mitochondrial DNA, which traces a direct female line, and the autosomal DNA, which kind of covers everybody in the middle. Each of these 3 kinds of tests has value in your family history research. So I want to cover them really quickly just to introduce you to these ideas if you haven't heard them before, or to refresh your memory about some of the things that these kinds of tests can do to help you tell your individual, unique DNA story. So the first thing to remember about these 3 different kinds of tests is that they give you 2 different kinds of results. So each kind of DNA test is going to give you access to a match list. It's going to link you to other people. These are other people who've also been tested at these testing companies. They're your DNA matches. Additionally, you're going to receive information that links you to places. These are locations that your DNA is identifying you with. So no matter what kind of test you take, 2 different kinds of results. Results linking you to people and results linking you to places. So let's start by talking about the Y DNA test. This test can only be taken by men because, well, only men have a Y chromosome. So ladies, that doesn't mean we're exempt from participating in this test. In fact, it makes us exactly in a more powerful position, actually, because it's our job to ensure that the men around us participate in this kind of test. This test will tell us about that direct male line ancestor. So think in your mind, who is your father's 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 father? And what do you know about him? What don't you know about him? What do you want to know about him? This test is all about him. But it's important that we remember that the Y-DNA test, while it represents our own direct male line, any man on your pedigree chart can benefit from doing some Y-DNA testing research. If you have any man in your pedigree who you don't know his father, this test might be able to help you find him. So what you need to do is find a direct male descendant of that ancestor to be tested. So in my example here, you'll see that we've got this guy, Mr. Williams. This is on your mom's side of the family. So what we need to do is find a direct male descendant of Mr. Williams to be tested. So that's going to be Mr. Williams. But not Mr. Williams, your ancestor, but Mr. Williams, your cousin. Someone that's living today that has the surname of the person you want to research. So you would start with your ancestor, Mr. Williams, and you would find his son, and then his son's son, and then his son's son's son, until you get down here to the present and you can find someone to be tested to represent that direct male line. So when you take that test, what amazing, incredible, life-changing results are you going to get? This is it. You just get a Y-DNA profile is what we call this. It's just a list of numbers. It's a set of values that represent Mr. Williams. He had these values. And if you understand that for just a second, think how amazing that is, that someone living today actually carries around with them this personal record of your ancestor. and we can tap into that record and learn more about him. So the record itself actually helps link us to other people who've been tested, and those results are presented to you in a table like this one. It's your match list. These are the people that you match. These are the individuals that have also taken the test that have a Y-DNA profile very similar to your own. So you get this list of matches, this way that your DNA links you to other people. You also get this haplogroup assignment. Your haplogroup is your deep ancestral group. It's information that links you to a place, a location where your ancestor may have been from. So you get both kinds of data. You get information that links you to people, and you get a little bit of information that links you to places. So what is the very best thing that can happen if you decide to move forward with Y-DNA testing? The very best thing that can happen is that you find the one, someone who knows something more, or at least something different, about your family history than you do. So it might be a scenario like this one, where you have individuals who've done some good genealogical research. They've traced their lines back to a particular ancestor, in this case, Jeremiah Welsh. So these men, because they are all direct male descendants of Jeremiah, they should all have Jeremiah's Y chromosome. Again, how amazing is this? That Jeremiah's been dead for centuries, maybe. That's how long this Y-DNA lasts, a very long time. But these three men will carry his record, and they will pass it on into the future. So they have this record, they get it tested, they all match each other, they know what Jeremiah's Y-DNA looked like. What they don't know is if Joseph Walsh, who also lives in the same town as Jeremiah Welsh, is related. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence. I'm sure you've come across these situations in your own research. How do we find out if Jeremiah and Joseph were related to each other? That's when we turn to Y-DNA, because Joseph's Y-DNA was passed down father to son, father to son, father to son. All we need to do is find someone who carries that Y-DNA signature, have them tested, and compare that with the three descendants of Jeremiah. When we do that and we see that their Y-DNA matches, we can create kind of a very simple pedigree chart like this one. The Y-DNA usually can't tell us the exact relationship between Jeremiah and Joseph, but it does show that the one exists. They do share a relationship. And that can give you energy, courage, encouragement to keep going, to try to figure out what is the genealogical connection between Jeremiah and Joseph. So what's the worst thing that can happen when you take one of these Y-DNA tests? Really, the worst thing that can happen is that you don't find anyone. You don't have any good matches. In fact, that's what happened to Bill Cooke, Lisa's husband. I told Bill over and over, you've got to take this Y-DNA test. It can really help you on this line that you're researching, Harry Cooke. There's a lot of people who've taken a Y-DNA test with the Cooke, spelled with an E or without an E, surname. And I said, Bill, you've got to do this. And so he trusted me, he listened to me, and he did the testing. And then I got the results. And I was like, Bill, I'm sorry. Right now, he just doesn't have any good matches. No one that looks like a promising lead to help him find out more about his ancestors. And that's the case for a lot of people. That will change. I do believe it will change in the future as these databases grow. But for now, you just have to be prepared for that possibility that maybe you will be one of the ones who has that unique Y-DNA profile and just nobody else has been tested. So if you're going to do the Y-DNA test, you have to do it at Family Tree DNA. They're the only ones offering Y-DNA testing for matching purposes. So if you go to familytreedna.com, you can order their Y-DNA test. I recommend the 67 marker test. It's probably the best to go with, but the 37 marker is totally enough to get you started. So if you just want to jump in and figure out what this Y-DNA testing is all about, just take the 37 marker test. You can always take the 67 marker test later by just paying more money, and you don't have to submit a new sample. So I give the Y-DNA test 5 stars. It's my favorite. I think it's so much easier to understand than the other tests. It's direct, it's dealing with one line of inheritance, it's following the path of the surname. There's just so many wonderful and good things about the Y-DNA test, and I highly recommend it. Next up, we've got the mitochondrial DNA. Your mitochondrial DNA traces that direct maternal line down the bottom of your pedigree chart. So again, I want you to think to yourself, who is your mother's 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 mother? Who is your earliest known ancestor on that direct maternal line? What's her name? What do you know about her? What don't you know about her? This mitochondrial DNA test is all about her. But again, remember that mitochondrial DNA can be used to help you find out about any woman in your pedigree chart, not just your own direct maternal line. The deal is you have to find the right person to be tested. So in this case, if you were looking for information on your father's line about Ms. Swenson, what you would need to do is find Ms. Swenson's daughter, or son and have them tested. Because as women, we pass our mitochondrial DNA down to both of our children, male and female. So a man can be tested to represent his own direct female line, and women can also be tested to represent their own direct female line. So what amazing, incredible, life-changing results do you get from mitochondrial DNA testing? Just this. It's just a profile, a list of numbers, information that links you to your ancestors, but it kind of looks unimpressive. But again, this list of numbers is compared with everyone else who's been tested. And what is reported to you is a table of people that share your direct maternal line in some way or another, relatively closely or very distantly. These people do share a direct maternal line ancestor with you eventually. The problem with mitochondrial DNA testing is that even if you match someone exactly, you might share a common ancestor really recently, just 1 or 2 or 3 generations ago. Or you might not share a common ancestor for 20 generations, and it's kind of hard to tell the difference. So that's why mitochondrial DNA sometimes isn't as useful as the Y DNA. But in addition to your match list, you also get a haplogroup, just like you did with the Y DNA. Your haplogroup tells you about the origins of your direct maternal line. So it's telling you about places, location that should relate somehow, eventually, to that direct maternal line ancestor. So what's the best case scenario? What's the best thing that can happen if you take that mitochondrial DNA test? Well, the best thing that can happen is that you find the one, someone to help you answer family history questions. I found with mitochondrial DNA, it's not as successful when you just take the test and look at your match list. Instead, it's best to construct some kind of case study for yourself. So in my example here, we have these 3 ladies. We have Sarah Miller and Rachel Miller and Jane Miller. Well, Sarah's your ancestor, and for the life of you, you cannot figure out anything about her parents. You know she came from Ireland, and you can find her in this boarding house in New York on the census. You see her there, and you see she's from Ireland, and you see also on that same census, Rachel and Jane both listed, both from Ireland. So you say to yourself, here's 3 girls, they have the same surname, they're all from the same place, living in the same boarding house, all around the same age. Boy, they sure look related. Wouldn't it be nice to know? Especially because you've taken a peek at Rachel's records, and she did a great job of documenting her family. In fact, you know who her parents were. So if you could link your Sarah to this Rachel genetically, you might be able to have a great lead on who Sarah's parents were. So you, as a direct maternal descendant of Sarah, you have your mitochondrial DNA tested. Then you have to do some research, some descendancy research. You have to find a direct maternal descendant of Rachel and Jane and have their mitochondrial DNA tested. Once you do, if you find out they are a match, then you're that much closer to helping you figure out who Sarah's parents were, because you know she was related to Rachel and Jane. So what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen if you take this mitochondrial DNA test? For me, I feel like the worst thing that can happen is that you get too many matches. A lot of times, because our mitochondrial DNA doesn't change as quickly as the Y DNA, there are so many people who share our mitochondrial DNA profile. And when that happens, it can be really frustrating to try to sort through all of those matches to see if there's anything valuable. So while sometimes you don't have any matches, I do feel like with the mitochondrial DNA, a lot of times you have too many. What do you do for that mitochondrial DNA test? You have to go to Family Tree DNA. They're the only company offering mitochondrial DNA testing for matching purposes. There's one level of test that you should purchase. It's called the full sequence test. So if you're going to do this mitochondrial DNA thing, this is the only way to go about doing it. Family tree DNA, the full sequence test. How useful is mitochondrial DNA? I give it 3 stars. I give it 3 stars for the reasons I listed. One, that a lot of times you just don't have the matches that you need to help you figure out the situation. And 2, because even if you do find a good match, you can't be sure that you share a recent common ancestor. Your connection could be very distant. So mitochondrial DNA is best used in a case study situation like I showed you, instead of just being tested and hoping the database provides you some good information, because usually it won't. The third kind of test we're going to go over is called the autosomal DNA. Your autosomal DNA covers both sides of your family, which on the outset sounds amazing, but it can be a little bit confusing to understand. It starts by really understanding some basic biology. Now I know I can hear you groaning from here. No, please don't talk science. I promise, you already know most of what I'm already going to tell you. For example, you already know that all of us have 2 parents, right? Even if you don't know who they are, we know that this is a biological fact. So you got half of your DNA from your dad and half of your DNA from your mom. The thing is, they got half from their parents, who got half from their parents, who got half from their parents. So what you really look like is this, kind of this mixed up jumble of parts, of pieces. And what the testing company does is they look at your mixed up jumble of pieces and your match's mixed up jumble of pieces, and they identify the parts of you that are the same. And based on how much the same you are, the testing company gives you a relationship, a prediction of your relationship. So there are actually 4.5 testing companies offering this kind of testing for your family history needs. Now, each of them has unique products and services, and they all have something to offer you. But in a sense, there's a best route to take this testing so that you can maximize your results and your exposure to lots of different tools, companies, and matches. So the best route currently means you start your testing process with Ancestry DNA. Now, the reason we start with Ancestry is twofold. First of all, you can't transfer in to Ancestry, only out. So the only way to be a part of their database is to give them your physical DNA sample. So we have to start with them. We also start with them because they have the largest database. They have millions more people than any other testing company. So it's just a bigger pool to go fishing in. So you start with Ancestry. Then you can transfer your data. Now this is just a file of information. This is not your physical sample. You transfer a file of information from Ancestry into Family Tree DNA and into MyHeritage DNA. Those 2 transfers are free. You can get access to their database, to their matches for free. And that's a great way to expand your opportunity to meet more people in the DNA world. There's also a company called 23andMe. Now again, like Ancestry, in order to get into 23andMe, you have to give them a physical DNA sample. You can transfer your data out of 23andMe into Family Tree DNA and into MyHeritage. So that is also an option. But again, 23andMe just has a much smaller database than Ancestry. The last company, called Living DNA, I've given a half to, because right now they only offer that origins information. They don't offer a match list. And so they will in the future, but for right now, for family history purposes, most of the time we're looking at our matches. So Living DNA is not at the top of the list yet. But I think as their product continues to improve, it will be something that we'll want to do. And you will be able to transfer into Living DNA from any of the tested companies. So that's a bonus as well. So what do you get from this autosomal DNA test? Well, you get a match list. You get a list of people that share enough DNA with you that the testing company has decided they're your relative. Whether they're your first cousin or your 5th cousin, they're going to show up on your match list. The testing company also gives you that pie chart, those pretty maps and percentages. These are the parts of your DNA that are linking you to places, actual physical locations where your DNA says you are from. So what is the best case scenario? What's the best thing that can happen when you take this autosomal DNA test? Well, the best thing that can happen is you find the person that helps you fill in the blanks in your family history. For example, this is my grandma's pedigree chart. This is my dad's mom. And you can see we've got quite a bit of work to do on her family tree. So while we're working on the traditional research, I can also look into my dad's DNA match list. What I'm looking for are cousins. I'm looking for people who share DNA with my dad and who share family history information with this pedigree chart. I can then link up with them, use their information, work with the information they have to help me fill in the blanks in my pedigree chart. What's the worst thing that can happen? Usually the worst thing that can happen is you just don't find any close matches. For a lot of our research, we really need second or third cousins to make a lot of progress using this kind of technology. If you don't have good second or third cousin matches, it just becomes a lot more complicated. Often this happens for those of you living outside of the United States or for those of you who are recently immigrated into the United States. But as the database continues to grow, this will change. And I think all of us in the very near future are going to find a lot of close matches with whom we can work together to do some really good family history research. And really, that's what it comes down to, is the research. Because after all, this is genetic genealogy. So that means we have to have that genealogy component. So I'm going to bring Lisa back in, and she's going to talk to us. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Diane.
About how do you incorporate your genealogy into this family history research? Do you have some tech tips for us?
Oh, you know that I do. Thank you so much for bringing clarity. I've heard her talk about DNA before, and it's like each time I pick up a little bit more that it goes in the old brain. So thank you.
Good.
And Diane's going to be back in just a little while to go more in depth on DNA.
Absolutely.
But let's start the Googling.
Do it.
Okay. All right, let's get to Googling, because that's going to help us fill in some of those gaps in your story. Maybe you feel like you watch these videos and that's great, but I don't have all that kind of stuff. We're going to help you find it. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to start with what you already have. And if you've been doing research for a while, you know that starting with yourself is a good place to be. So starting with what you have, here's an example again of my great-grandfather's naturalization records. This record I've extracted a lot of important information out of and put that in my genealogy database, but there's more here that I can use to leverage to get out and find more information. One of the things we can do is look at the date. The date here we have is in February of 1940. This is when he was actually sworn in and naturalized. So I got to thinking, maybe that was big news. Maybe that ended up in the newspapers. I checked his local city newspaper and there wasn't an article. But if you think about where does a naturalization ceremony happen, it's probably at the county courthouse or somewhere nearby. So I went to the county's newspaper and that's where I found this article. This is incredible to me because it leaps from the document itself into an account by somebody who was there who's talking about the ceremony itself. And yeah, it actually lists Gus Sporen. He at that point changed his name from Sporowski to Sporen. And so what a wonderful addition to being able to tell his immigration story. So how are we going to find all these wonderful things? Well, we're going to do it with Google, and we're going to be Googling for records. Maybe you go onto Google and the first thing you think is, oh, I'm going to put in my family's name or my great-grandfather's name, and you can do that. But I want to encourage you that it's important to know that Google cannot get inside of databases. It can't search inside PDFs and Excel spreadsheets that are attached to websites. So if your ancestor isn't named by name on the web page, it may not come up in a search result. So we're going to focus on what are the records that would perhaps contain my ancestors and then go from there. So we're going to head to google.com and start our search. But we're going to start by speaking the language of Google. And it really does have its own language. Now, why would you go to Google? You know, we did a live event and we asked folks whether they use Google, how satisfied they are with that. And a lot of people said it didn't even occur to them to use google.com, or they've grown frustrated with it. Well, why would you want to use it? Here in New York, the way everybody gets around is with Uber. And so, yeah, Diane and Beth talked me into using Uber, and I did it, and I figured it out, and you get on your smartphone, and you call up the car, and it works amazingly. So I was thinking, that's kind of an analogy for Googling. If you think of the internet as being chock full of all of these websites that potentially have information about your family to fill in that story, some of them are going to be archives and libraries and universities, but others are going to be, you know, your cousin Fred in Topeka, who you've never met. And he just has a small family history website of his own that he does for his own purposes. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to travel the web and find those kinds of amazing gems? So Google is like the Uber of the internet to find your family history. It's going to know all the back alleys, all the streets, all the one-way streets, and it's going to get you there as quickly as possible. Now, going into google.com, if I were just to do a plain search for British newspapers, because I want to find information about my husband's Cooke family. Now, they lived in England, and I want to find some newspaper articles. You could end up with about 80 million results. And that does not feel like it's worth your time or energy. And maybe you feel like the guy on the screen. It's a bit frustrating. Well, there is so much now on the web that there's just no way we're going to be down to, 5, 10, 20, even 100 results in a typical search. But we can improve it. We can learn to speak Google's language. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is use Google search operators. We're going to take the words and the phrases that you search for, and we're going to add the operators to them. So in my case, I used British newspapers, and I put that in quotation marks. Quotation marks are search operators, and it tells Google, we need to use just this exact phrase. It has to be British first, newspapers second, and each word must be spelled exactly the way I spelled it. That could come in pretty handy for you with your unique surnames and the variations of spellings that you have. It's a great way to kind of narrow in the focus. So use the quotation marks to tell Google what's exact and how it's to be spelled, and then you are going to talk about time frame to Google. You're going to say, I'm looking for a specific year. In my search, I'm looking for 1890 through 1915. To Google, those are numbers. They're 4-digit numbers, right? But for us, they're years in genealogical terms. So why not use the num-range search operator? It's so powerful for genealogy research. You're going to go to Google and type in the first date. Now, not the January, February thing, just the 4-digit number. So I have 1890.1915. That tells Google it's anywhere within that range. Any website that has my phrase of British newspapers and has a 4-digit number, a year, that falls within that range, those are the results that I want to get. So check out the difference. We went from about 80 million results to maybe 70 in the 70,000s. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's a lot of results. Well, there's a lot of web pages on the web. And so nowadays, that is a dramatic reduction. You're really talking a fraction of the original results that you got. And one of these looks really promising. And of course, it's right there at the top of page 1. It's British Newspaper Archive. So I clicked through to there, and I used their advanced search to do a little bit of searching on Harry Cooke, my husband's great-grandfather, and his wife, Mary Ann. Now, I know that Mary Ann passed away sometime a few years before Harry and his son Raymond immigrated to America. But when I was doing this search, I didn't know the reason why, what had happened. So I thought maybe I could find something in newspapers. So I went to the advanced search, and they put the quotation marks around this. So when you are using other websites that have search engines, it's very possible that they will have an advanced search and that they will allow for search operators. Now, these operators may be different than the ones that Google allows, but if you use the advanced search, you'll find that it then puts the proper operators around your words and phrases, and you can see them there in my search box. And when I run the search, I find newspaper articles, and not just any newspaper articles. We have information about Harry, and look at this article, drowned in a water tank. This is the death of Mary Ann Cooke. And you can imagine the feeling it was to be searching and searching and then to come across this. I'm going to tell you more about her story because there's more that we can learn from research through Mary Ann. But while I was there at the British Archive, at the British Newspaper Archive, I wanted to take a quick look and see, well, how about the ship that they traveled on? I'd love to have a picture of the ship. And so I know that from the passenger list, they sailed on the Tunisian. So I put in Tunisian as a word that must be included. That was in the advanced search of British Newspaper Archive, and it put a plus sign in front of it. Now, you Googlers out there who have Googled before, you know that the plus sign has meant this is an exact word, it has to be spelled this way. That's how it used to function. Don't use it anymore. Those days have gone by, and now it's the quotation marks that have replaced the plus sign. So that's a great reason. Follow my blog, because that's what we're doing on the blog and on the podcast, is we're making folks aware of any of those kinds of changes that come up so that you're not putting energy out there where it's not going to pay off. But sure enough, I found this article, and it's an interview with a passenger on the Tunisian talking about the ship and what it's like. I mean, this is like really a first-person view. Now, you can learn more about newspaper research in my Genealogy Gems Premium membership, and during our live event, I gave away a one-year premium membership to one of our attendees, and so you can learn more about that at genealogygems.com. That is a full-hour video class. We could certainly do a full hour on newspapers. Can't do it during this session, but I wanted you to know that there are more resources available and that there are loads of video classes and all the handouts available for you. So let's talk a little further about how to get into those gaps with Google and tell an even richer story. Here is the passenger list from 1912, and this is where, after Mary Ann's passing, Harry and Raymond have gotten on the RMS Tunisian, and they are traveling to Canada to move to Regina, Saskatchewan. Here on the manifest, you can see when you get to the final page, here's the manifest, and it says the vessel's name was the Tunisian. That's where I got that from originally, to go check it out at the newspaper archive. And it gives the name of the captain and all kinds of really interesting information. So I went to google.com and I did a search on the SS Tunisian, and I put that in quotation marks to see if that would pull up an exact phrase. I also have a time frame, and I really just want the year of 1912. So I put 1912, ... 1912. You can do that. You can make it a range of any span that you want. And because Tunisia is in North Africa, it seemed like some of the results I was getting brought up North Africa. So I just subtracted the word Africa. That is another powerful tool that you can use with search operators. When you're getting stuff in those results that is just cluttering things up and clearly irrelevant, subtract them out. Take the keyword and be sure that you're only using keywords that don't apply in any way to your family, okay? So if my cooks had lived in Africa at some point, I'm not gonna be wanting to subtract the name Africa. But they didn't, So I'm going to subtract Africa and put the minus sign right up against that word so Google knows, oh, if the page has that word, she doesn't want it. This is going to come in really handy. I'll bet you have a couple of ancestors with common surnames. Yeah. If you have the common surname Green, you might be subtracting eco-friendly or Kermit the Frog or anything else that's green. You can subtract multiple words and phrases out and then add in what it is you're looking for. And look at these results. Not just websites that mention the Tunisian, but images, postcards. These are fabulous. Oh my gosh, they're going to fit right into our story. And they're out there on a variety of different websites. And in fact, one of those links, it was really interesting, went straight through to eBay. Now, in the past, eBay wasn't showing up in search results, but it does now. And there were several cards here. So it digs into the other websites that have information. This one popped up. This says it's GG Archives. Look at this, the deck plans of the Tunisian. Who would have thought? And a wonderful visual for the story of the Cooke family. So it shows you all of the staterooms and the cabins and where people ate and what it was like. This is a wonderful treasure trove, this website, of the old ships that our ancestors sailed on. And a newspaper article. This is from, when I got to this website, which I think this one was back on the British Newspaper Archive, it had the Allen Royal Mail, that the fact that the Tunisian was going to be carrying mail along with passengers. And so when I realized that they had records from 1912 for the Tunisian, I just went to the month that they sailed and found an article really announcing the next sailing of that vessel. So just wonderful, rich context that comes together and takes genealogy from names and dates to story and visuals. In fact, here's another one. Now, these aren't the Cookes. This is my great-grandmother, Louise Nikolowski, who married Gus Borowski. These are some relatives of hers, and I would take these old photographs and take a look at some of the ones that you have. You'll see the names of the towns and the locations, sometimes even street addresses. And these are from Germany. I took this information, put the name of the photographer into Google, did Sampson and Company in quotation marks, photographer, Germany, Dortmund, which was the town. And look at this. Google brings back this vast collection of every photo that's been posted on the web by this same photographer. Who knows? You could perhaps even find other photos of your family. So Google brought us to a lot of amazing results, and some of those were eBay auctions. And of course, you know, eBay is the auction website where you can find all kinds of amazing gems out there. I want to show you a little bit of a direct eBay search. Going straight to eBay and putting it to work for you. This is really cool. So Raymond Cooke, who was Harry's son, he wrote later, years later when he was older, about this immigration trip. He said, "We had a glorious voyage and the crossing took 5 days. We traveled up the St. Lawrence to Montreal and boarded the Imperial Limited train to begin our 3-day trip to Regina. Arriving in Regina, we found that the city had been struck by a cyclone the previous Sunday." Can you imagine? So I took this information and thought, okay, well, there's a couple of key things here that I could try to find images for. So if I go to eBay and do a search on Regina, the town, and cyclone, yeah, it was a big deal in 1912, and there's a lot of postcards, and there's photographs, and all kinds of wonderful images that I can use to enhance this story. But you don't have to stop there, because, see, when you search on eBay, you are searching at a given moment in time. Next week, somebody else could put up the most amazing photograph. It could include your ancestor. And I tell you the truth, I have literally found photos of ancestors on eBay. So we need to be able to get eBay to run this search on a regular basis for us. So after you run your search, you see where the blue arrow says, save this search? be signed into a free eBay account, click that link, and then it will automatically run this search for you all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it may be weeks, it may be months later, an auction will pop up, and there's the picture you've been waiting for, or there's the item you've been waiting for. Look what I found. The Regina Tornado, June 30th of 1912. I love this postcard, and it came straight out of an eBay auction, sent to me weeks after I ran the initial auction. And I have found all kinds of genealogy gems. This is an original stock certificate when Gaylord, Minnesota was wanting to bring telephones into their community. They put out stocks, and that's how they raised money to be able to pay for the new system. This, you can see in the inset, it's focused in there on the certificate. That's my husband's great-great-grandfather's original signature. He was the bank manager, so he would sign these. How cool to have his original documents. But automating your searches is not just done in eBay. You can do this in Google as well. If you don't already have a free Google account, this is the reason you're going to want one, because you can use Google Alerts to take these searches that you've been doing and automate them. You go to google.com/alerts and you sign in with your free account. Just copy that search query that you put together with all your search operators and your terms and your numbers, paste that into Google Alerts, and give it your email address. Doesn't have to be a Gmail account, it can be any email address, and click Create an Alert. You are going to have Google operating like your personal genealogy assistant, okay? It's gonna be out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, looking for new and updated web pages. So that's the key. You're not gonna get the same old stuff over and over again. You're gonna get anything that's new or updated. And folks, you can have up to 1,000 of these. So you are gonna be busy. And if you find that you're getting alerts that are coming back and they're just not hitting the mark, go back and revise them. You can always do that. If you wanna learn more about Google search, I did write a book on the topic. It's called The Genealogist Google Toolbox, and it's in its second edition. So you can check that out. There is a whole chapter on Google Alerts. There's also one on common surname search, and lots of chapters about all the various tools, as well as those core search strategies that are just gonna make a huge difference in your Googling. I wanna leave you with this idea and this story specifically. Remember I told you we would be coming back to Diahan Cooke. And what happened to her? Once I found her initial newspaper article that described the fact that she had drowned, she had committed suicide, I wanted to be able to take that information, and you can multiply that into a lot more information. Here's an image of Diahan, and Raymond had written on the back of it some key information about her. That's how I knew when she had generally passed away, although he's got the year wrong totally. I did the search, and I get into the newspapers, and I find this Tunbridge Wells woman's sad death. Now, what had happened was Harry Cooke ran the H.R. Cooke Carriage and Motor Works. It was a shop right there kind of attached to his home. And so he was busy, he was working, he has all these guys working for him, and Diahan seems to have been suffering from some depression. And so they knew that she was having some issues. In this newspaper, this is quite a long article, it's a coroner's inquest, and it's word for word what was said. In fact, it says here, I'll read to you, Donald Thurkel, who is a coach bodybuilder, said he was employed by Mr. Cooke. In consequence of what he was told by the doctor, witnesses went into the house, and he was the witness, and he searched for the deceased. He saw a pair of steps standing over a trap door. Witness went up the steps and lifted the trap door and procured a candle to look around. As it was dark, Mrs. Cooke's little boy, this is Raymond, came up with the witness and asked, "What is that in the water?" And they found Diahan and pulled her body from the tank. And in fact, it went on to say that on the right wrist, the witness had found a piece of cord, so it looked like she had tried to tie her wrists together, and there was a small bottle in the folds of her dress which smelt very strong of laudanum. So she was really suffering, and the details were amazing that were all in this inquest. In the end, the jury returned a verdict of death from drowning whilst of unsound mind and expressed sympathy with the husband of the deceased. So after kind of taking in this amazing, powerful story, I went back to this article and thought about what else can I pull from this? And what I noticed was it doesn't just always talk to her about her as Mary Ann or him as Harry Cook. So I made a list of all the different kinds of ways they get referred to in the articles I currently have. And then I started to expand on that. So we've got Mr. Cook, Mrs. Cook, and then Mr. and Mrs. Cook without an E, which was a common misspelling. Master Cook, master was a term commonly used for the children. So Raymond is referred to as Master Cook in some articles and some items. Raymond Cook, Master Cook without an E, and Mrs. Cook with an E. So if you take these variations of how people might have been addressed in the news, and I went back to the British News Archive or back to Google and did some more searching, and I found literally dozens more articles. Articles talking about Mary Ann playing in a musical quartet and Raymond helping her. And here's Master Cook and Mrs. Cook playing at an event. They were very musical people, had an amazing career in that respect. And if I was only searching on those first names, I would never have found these additional records and stories. So be thinking about that. And I want to leave you with this one of the most important pieces of information that I found, and that was the street address. You know, we get very focused on our ancestors, but in reality, places tend to stay put when people don't, right? So I took the address out of the article, 49 Kirkland Road, or Kirkdale Road, and I did a search on that. And that brought me to articles. This particular article, it says the owner is going abroad. He's moving. He's immigrating to Regina, Saskatchewan. But his name is not listed, only 49 Kirkdale Road in Tunbridge Wells. And it goes on to describe the household, the furnishings, the bedsteads, and the 2 cottage pianofortes that Mary Ann would have played. So how amazing to take this and expand on it and really enter their world. And that's something that you can do with your own research. I'd like to share with you now how all of this new content came together in a more comprehensive story. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that.
Yes, this is one of my favorite videos that you've made. I've probably watched it, 10 times, and I love it. Each time, it's so powerful.
And even though we didn't get any DNA luck right out of the gate, we still had a story. And there's more story, and many of you, we've seen already how many of you have already tested. Let's have Diane take us further and see what more we can pull out of those results.
Yeah, let's do it.
Take it away.
All right. So I never used Google before, ever, to do any family history research until I met Lisa. And as soon as I heard her describe how to use Google to do family history research, I realized this is the perfect opportunity to find out if there's already someone doing some research, DNA research, on your surname. So I think one of the best ways you can use Google is to use Lisa's tips and search for your surname and then the word DNA. So here in my example, I'm looking for my Hazelwoods, which is my surname. So in quotation marks, so I keep these two words together, I put Hazelwood DNA. And lo and behold, I can find the Hazelwood DNA project. And right away, I can see how many people have joined it. I can access the project administrator and ask him questions. So this is a fantastic way to find out what kind of DNA research is going on in your particular surname arena. So really, what does that do, that searching Google for your surname? It links you to other people. And that is really the first part of our story when we're telling it to other people about the things that our DNA can do. So our story has these two parts. It has the parts that link us to other people and the parts that link us to places. So let's start with the places. This places story actually has two very distinct parts, right? When you get that information from your testing company, your autosomal DNA origins information, those pretty pie charts and percentages, you really have two different kinds of results. You have places that you recognize and places that you don't recognize, right? So let's start by talking about the places that you recognize. So maybe you pull up your pie chart and you see that you're 33% from Great Britain. And you think to yourself, well, that makes sense because I've done my family history research. I know I go back to Frederick Stuart, who was born on the 12th of March, 1856 in London, England. So I know that I've got lines coming out of Great Britain. And that all seems to make sense as far as what you already know about your family history. So when you realize that, how do you tell a story about those percentages? So I've come up with a few memes about how you can tell people about your heritage in a way that's kind of fun and entertaining, and most importantly, a way that appeals to kids. Because I'll tell you what, if I didn't have kids at home, I would have no idea what a meme is. But they spend so much time looking at these, and they laugh, and they think they're hilarious. So I've made my own. I'm anxious to hear what you think. So this first one says, my DNA says I can eat as much bratwurst as I want. So food is a huge storyteller. So take that food connection, connect it to your DNA, and give yourself the right to eat some really good things. Secondly, your DNA is connecting you to places. So this is Ireland. My mom and I visited there together, and it says, my DNA says I belong here. And I've talked with so many of you who have felt this way, that you've entered a location, a home, a plot of land, a country, and you have felt immediately like you belonged there, that there's a connection. That's a story that can be told with those percentages of DNA. And lastly, you can say, my DNA says I can rock this suit. Because let's be honest, not very many people can. But hey, if you've got to show your pride, do it with your clothing. So if you come across places that you don't recognize, what does that mean? How do you tell that story? A lot of you have come up and asked me this kind of question. I don't understand why I see these places in my family history. How does this make sense? The number one explanation for these places that you've never heard of or never seen in your family history is this idea that our DNA has a time and a place. So while you are living today wherever you are, your DNA is a record of places long, long ago. So to try to help you understand this relationship, I'm going to tell you what I call my mango theory. So are you ready? Let's talk about how mangoes have to do with your DNA and your origins. So if you wanted to purchase a mango in your hometown today, could you do it? Now, I know many of you who actually live in tropical locations are thinking, well, yeah, I just walk outside and pick it off the tree. But for the rest of you who live somewhere less warm and tropical, your mango probably did not grow on your tree outside. It came from somewhere else. So a lot of the US mangoes come from Brazil. So let's say that 2 weeks ago, this mango was on a tree in Brazil. So I think we can all agree that at that point, it was a Brazilian mango, right? Well, then somebody picked that mango off the tree, they took it to the coast, and they put it in a boat destined for the US. So at that point, when this boat sails away from the coast, enters international waters, then whose mango is it? Is it still a Brazilian mango? Or who does it belong to? Well, then the mango eventually arrives in the United States. Maybe gets to the port, it's offloaded off the ship, and it gets on a truck destined for your nearby grocery store. So who owns it then? Whose mango is it then? Does it belong to the food company that purchased it, to Kroger or Safeway or Publix? Who owns it? Where is it from? Eventually, it ends up in your grocery store. Let's say it's here in New York City. I can walk down the street and purchase a mango. Does that mean it's a New York mango? It's hard to say, isn't it? And that's the problem that our testing companies are having. They're seeing these mangoes in your DNA, and they're trying to assign where they come from. One of the techniques that they're using is to look around you, because your mango, if it's a Brazilian mango, is going to be at the market surrounded by other things that are sold in Brazil, like papayas and guavas. In contrast, if my mango is here in New York City, it's probably going to be next to an apple and an orange. So the testing companies are using techniques to look around, and not just at the mango or that specific kind of DNA that you have, but to see what's around it. And they're getting better at estimating when you were where. So if you wanted to make a meme for this, you might say, my DNA says I'm a mixed breed. And that's true for all of us. Even if you feel like your heritage is completely and unequivocally European, there is still so much diversity and so much mixing that's happened in our past that I think all of us can really confidently say we are mixed breeds. Now, how do you bring all of this together? How do you bring this information to someone in a way that gets them excited or helps them understand what kind of information you've really received from this DNA test? So I want to show you this really cool video that I made using Animoto. And I just took some screenshots of the DNA test results and added some texts. I used their fabulous framework and I just dumped it all in, and I want you to see the results. Okay, so that video was an example of how you can tell just a short, interesting story about your family history and your DNA. So let's move away now from the story of places into the story of people. Let's talk about that match list. So when you're looking at this match list, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And really the question that you want to ask yourself is, what story do I want to tell? Because there are a lot of stories going on inside your match list. So choosing one ancestor, choosing one match, choosing one angle is going to help you tell a better story. So most of you, I'm guessing, want to use your DNA matches to tell the story of your ancestors. So how do you do that? How do you take this huge list of matches and tell the story of ancestors? Well, usually it starts with a question. Do you have any family history research questions that you're trying to find? Well, let's try using our DNA to see if we can get some answers. So here's the question we're going to deal with today. The question is about Private Richmond C. Claunch. I've done some family history research. I know that Richmond, Virginia Clonch and his wife, Lily Harvey, are my ancestors. I'm certain of that. However, I don't know who my Richmond's father is. So in Family Search, which is a wonderful family history tool, there's a one world tree concept, right? So anybody can go in and change or add or delete ancestors in a family tree that belongs to me, really, or that I see. So a long time ago, somebody added this person, Private Richmond C. Clonch, as the father of my Richmond, Virginia Clonch. And I've written to that person, and I've asked them to tell me, how did you come up with this? I'm excited, but I don't know why. There's no sourcing, no citation. And so ultimately, I can't figure out if this is right or not. So how can I use my DNA testing to find out more about this ancestor? Well, first, I want to tell you a few more details to help you understand the timeline of my Richmond, Virginia Clonch and this Private Clonch. So you'll see here that Private Clonch was born in 1839 in Alabama. This is according to the 1850 census. In 1860, I believe in January, but again, I'm not really sure, I think this is when my Richmond, Virginia Clonch was born. So where was Private Clonch around the time of this birth? Well, I know that in 1860 in June, he was in Caldwell, Louisiana. That is according to the 1860 census. So if my ancestor was born in Texas in 1860, maybe in January, and his supposed dad in June was in Louisiana, is that possible? Yes, right? But kind of unlikely. So it's difficult to line up these places. I can't ever really place Private Richmond Clonch in Texas. So we see Private Richmond Clonch goes on to enlist in the military in Louisiana in 1862, and he ultimately passes away in battle in November of 1862. So he doesn't ever have any other descendants that I can find, and I don't have any marriage record for him. It's kind of a dead end both ways. So this is the information I have. How can I take this into my DNA match list to find out more about my ancestor? So the first thing that you can do is search your match list by surname. No matter which testing company you're at, they all have this capability to just search your match list by surname. This search will only look at the information that's been posted by your matches. So it can't find something that's not there, right? So the search feature is helpful, but you have to keep in mind its limitations. So what kind of DNA matches am I really looking for? What kind can really help me with this question? So when you're looking for a specific ancestral connection, it's important to understand your own genealogical connection to the person that you're looking for. So I'm using my dad's DNA sample, which is ideal. You always want to use the DNA of the oldest living generation in order to find out more about your ancestor. So I'm using my dad's DNA. And when I look at this pedigree chart and I go out to this Clonch generation, this that I'm looking for, other people who are descendants of Richmond, Virginia Clonch's father, assuming he had other descendants, would be my dad's third cousins. Descendants of his grandparents, of Richmond, Virginia Clonch's grandparents, assuming again that there are other descendants of Richmond's grandparents, would be my dad's fourth cousins. That means in my match list, I'm looking for third cousins or fourth cousins that have some connection to this Clonch surname. So when I do this search by surname, I find a bunch of people, well, 3 people, I felt like it was a lot, 3 people, 3 fourth cousins who are all descendants of this woman, Eliza Clonch, who married Benjamin Luker. So there, right away, I have a surname connection, Clonch, and a genetic connection. The fact that these 3 people have showed up on my dad's match page means they share DNA. And with a shared DNA and a shared surname, what then should I do? So what I did is I opened up the pedigree charts of the people who'd been tested. Now this is a huge gift. It's a gift that you can give to your matches as well. All you need to do is link your public pedigree chart to your DNA test results. Now, I know a lot of you have a lot of information in your pedigree chart that maybe you're not ready to share with other people, and that's fine. I sincerely hope that you have some information that you would be willing to share with everyone. So just take that information, make a separate DNA-only pedigree chart, and link that to your DNA test results. That way, when someone like me is coming in to look for information, I can see what you already have, and it will just be faster for us to figure out our connection. So thankfully, one of these matches had this pedigree chart that you see here on the screen. You can see their connection to Eliza Clonch and Benjamin Luker, and you can see Eliza's parents listed here as Joseph Clonch and Anna Carter. Now, of course, this is someone else's research. So really, before I go too far, I kind of want to make sure they did this right. So I'd want to go in and just double check this connection. Make sure that Eliza and Joseph and Anna are really a family. Just do a little bit of looking and verification just to make sure we're on the right track before we get too far down the road. But the good news is that the genetic connection that I see with this match, the fourth cousin level, means that we could be connected through Joseph and Anna. So right now, I could be looking at the grandparents of my Richmond, Virginia Clonch. Joseph and Anna, these are people that he probably knew, that he spent time with, that he ate their food and played games at their house and went over for Christmas. These are real people in his life and real people in my life. And it was exciting just to see it on paper that this could be the connection that I've been looking for. So now I need to figure out if this private Richmond Clonch, who somebody said is my ancestor's dad, is the missing link, right? Because right now I've got Richmond, my ancestor, a missing generation, and then his grandparents, who maybe could be John and Anna. So does this private Clonch fit in the middle? Is he the son of John and Anna? Well, we can do a lot of genealogical research to try to figure that out. And we can make progress on that front that you're already familiar with, finding that information within the paper research. But another way you can look at it genetically is try to find other people who also share DNA with you and these descendants of Eliza Clonch. See if there's others who have more information that might be able to help us. So the way you do that at Ancestry is you click on this Shared Matches tool. So the Shared Matches tool, it takes you and this one other person, and it looks through the whole database and pulls out only those individuals who are sharing DNA with you and that other person. So in my case, it would be finding more people who could also be descendants of Joseph and Anna. So I can then use their pedigree charts, their resources, to help me figure out this connection to this family. So when I did that, when I used the Shared Matches tool, I found a lot more people. Some people didn't have any trace of Clonches in their family tree at all, and some people did. What I found was, in addition to Eliza Clonch and her family, I found this James Ira Clonch family. I found another family that I could be related to. And now I've got all of these pieces because of my genetics, and it's really my genealogy that needs to try to put them together. And of course, you gotta have a meme for this. So the meme for your DNA match list really is, my DNA says I found my family. Because the reality of looking at that list of cousins is that you do share a connection with them, each of them. They are your family. Even if you're unable to figure out your common ancestor right now, that shared DNA connection tells you there is a common ancestor between you. So I want to share with you now the story of my dad and his genetic genealogy pursuits. This is a little video, again, I made using Animoto. It doesn't go into a lot of detail, but what it does is capture the essence of this experience so that I can give it back to my dad. Because while he's interested in what I'm doing, he's not as passionate about it as I am. And he wants to be updated and know what's going on, but let's be honest, it's kind of hard to sit in front of a computer and scroll and click and scroll and click. So I've loved the way that Animoto has made it possible for me to give my dad this gift and to say, Dad, I appreciate you participating in this with me, and I want to show you what I found. in a way that's easy to understand and kind of just captures the essence of this testing experience. So let's watch. So I've loved having this tool to tell this story. It has really changed the way I see results even, to when I'm looking at things, I see the way that they could fit into this video format.
Absolutely. I mean, just the simplicity of how it comes together, it does. It makes you think about what are the pieces that I need, and you find those, and it does all the
Makes
rest.
itself.
I love this video of your dad. It was amazing.
Thank you.
So I think I need to tell them how, actually show them how to create their own Animoto video. This didn't take you very long, right?
No, it didn't. And I think that you're the perfect person to teach us how to get this done.
That's what we'll do. Thank you, Diane. All right, so let's make your video. You've got the content to do it, and now we have given you the skills to find even more information on the web. And sometimes you'll look on the web and you'll find information that takes you into an archive or a library. You're going to be bringing all of that richness back into your stories. When you think about creating a video like this, you're in a good shape because you do have a lot of content and you have the skills to find what you need, so you're going to be filling that in. I want to encourage you to think about your audience. So we get excited as genealogists. There's a lot of great stuff to work with, but a non-genealogist doesn't always get as excited as we do. So we want to make sure that we are keeping close to the story, keeping it pithy and interesting and revealing to them that unique story. And some of the ways you can do that is to not just necessarily scan a whole document and put the whole document on the screen. How about zeroing in on the signature, the date when it happened, the names? Most documents will have some key parts that you can zero in on, then cropping them so they can appear nice and big and readable on the screen, and really drive home quickly to your viewing audience what it is you're trying to communicate with that document. That is so often more effective than showing the entire document. So pull your documents together, keeping your audience in mind, and then create an outline. What I do is I go through and I try to tell that story in a bullet point outline. And let's keep your first one simple. Let's make it 12, 14 items. So you start at the beginning. And as I was working with my Harry Cook story, oh my gosh, there were so many things I wanted to include. But really, there was a core story of what drove them to immigrate to Canada from England. And so bullet pointing that out gives you that outline. Then take that and look at the content that you have, the documents, the photos, and pick out the best of the best that can represent that. If you're still missing something, head back out and do a little more research and see what you can dig up. Remember, we don't always have to have photos or images or videos of our own family. If that's missing, you can find other representative images that tell the same story, because you'll also have some text to work with as well. And you're going to head to Animoto.com and you're going to sign up, get a free trial to start, and you can click the Create button to get started. It's as simple as that. The first thing you're going to do is get yourself a background. And you noticed in our videos, there was some really cool imagery going on. We didn't do all that. Animoto did all that. That's what's so amazing about this. So scroll through and you'll find that there are several that have kind of old-timey looks. Some are very fun and modern and energetic. Take a look at them and see which one kind of suits your story. And more importantly, I think, suits the mood and the emotion of it. To me, that's really key in helping me find the right background. Now, Animoto does a great job of pairing your backgrounds with music, and so take a listen, see if you like the song. The great news is you can always change it out. So if you don't, you're not sure if the song is quite right, go up there and click Change Song in your dashboard. Here you're working in the Animoto application. You'll see some top songs that are suggested for you. You can even favorite some songs as you're working with the program. As you find songs you think, oh, that's not right for this, but boy, I want to keep it for another project. And you can also upload your own audio files. So that might be, how about a family history interview? Or MP3 audio that has words and music. Keep in mind copyright issues. Make sure that you have the rights to be able to upload that audio. But either way, you've got what you need to work with, whether it's the music that they give you or audio that you're going to upload yourself. So go back to that outline you made, take a look at it, and grab each of those items. I like to put them in one folder. I use Dropbox. Maybe you use iCloud or Google Drive or something else. It's so easy. If you put them all in one folder on your computer, then you can just click the plus sign, say, I'm going to add some photos, and you can navigate to where they are, whether they're on your Facebook page or they're in Dropbox or Instagram, wherever it is that you have your photos and your images. And remember, it's pictures and it's video. So if you have old home movies, this is going to work perfectly for you, and it's going to blend them together with those photographs that you have. So here are my images that I've put together in a Dropbox folder, and I'm going to click the first one, and then I'm going to hold my Shift key, and then I'm going to go and click the last one. That's going to select everything in the folder all at once, and then I just click Open, and it's going to upload all of that great content directly into my project. You can also, I believe, hold the Control key down and you can cherry pick which items, but hopefully you've just put in this folder what it is that you want to work with. Now, you'll notice that items get in here and maybe they're not exactly in the order that you wanted them. It's really easy to switch that. If you find that there was one that you added and you've changed your mind, click it to highlight it and just delete it. You can do that. You can also click your mouse over the image and drag them around, but first let's add some text. Let's just show you what this can do. We're going to click the plus sign and the T for text. And how about creating your opening slide? Think of these text slides as a way to kind of weave the story together, okay? To give a little more of the detail. Keep it short, keep it pithy, keep it concise. And I find myself going back and editing my words a little bit, just making sure that it really nails the point without getting overly wordy. These title cards can help you not only launch the story, and of course you could end the story with credits, but it's going to help you transition too, in between the different content. So use it that way. It can stand alone, or you can add that text to the items themselves. And I like to do a mix of both. So now I want to kind of resort this a little bit. If I didn't get them in quite the order I wanted, I can put my mouse on any of the items and just drag them to wherever I want to go. If you click a particular photo or image, you can then type in the text. So for this one with Raymond Cooke, I'm going to put, this is Raymond Harry Cooke. So when his image comes up in my video, it's going to have his title there, which is going to be wonderful. So keep playing with it, revisit your story, move things around as you need to, and if you find that there's an item that you really want to just Animoto just to stay a little longer on, kind of give it a little highlight, click that click that item and hit the star, and that will highlight. It means that it's going to be playing automatically, kind of timing everything, and then it'll just pause and give it a little extra attention. When you're ready to go, click the preview button. This is going to let you take a look and see how things look. I mean, here we are, we're just a couple of minutes into this, and I'm already being able to take a look at a completed video. When we preview, you can continue editing if you want, and typically you're going to want to go back once or twice or 3 times to kind of, shuffle things around, add a little bit of text, maybe feel like it might be moving a little bit slow. You've got some room to add some extra pictures, or you can adjust it. The beauty of Animoto is that it paces it perfectly. It knows what the song is and how long it is. It knows how the transitions work, and you can see all of this fading and moving. This is all automated, and it puts it together in the perfect sequence and pace. I remember making my daughter's wedding video, about 10 years ago. I think it took me 2 weeks to create that video, and it was 5 minutes long. I had to set every single transition. I had to get to the end and realize I was out of music and go back and do it again. Add more, cut more. It was so time-consuming, and it's one of the reasons that most of us never make videos. But it's no longer the case. You can see here in just 3-4 minutes, we have a completed video. And that's the exciting part of Animoto, that it means that no more is there a barrier to having to have all these immense skills, or even worse, a ton of time, but you can create exciting, riveting videos as quickly as this. So to recap, take a look at your outline, make sure that you know what the story is going to be, that you have the pieces of it, you've taken that outline and you've cherry-picked all the best content that you have, filled in the gaps with your new search strategies, drop them into a folder on your computer where you know that you can grab them and upload them to Animoto. You've picked a theme, that background that goes just smoothly in the background, kind of seamlessly together with your images. It's going to have a song, or you could upload yours or pick a different song. Preview so that you can really test drive and make sure everything's coming out the way you want it. Make your adjustments, and then hit produce. And there you will have a completed video that you can share. One of the top reasons I got so excited about Animoto when Beth first introduced it to me was, one, I'd been looking for a video product for a long time that I felt like anybody could use. But most importantly, I noticed that she told me you can download your videos in HD quality. In fact, they give you several different quality levels that you can do based on how you're going to use the video. So many applications don't allow you to do that. If you can download your video, it's not going to be a 1080 HD quality video. And this is key. It's key because this is your family and it's your story. And we don't want to trust it forever to somebody else's website or only have a low-res version that's been downloaded because that's all that you can get. You want an archival quality video that you can hang on to and do whatever you want with. And that's what you get with Animoto. We've had an amazing time. It's been amazing and getting here, Beth. We want to thank all of you genealogy gems out there. This has been a joy, and thank you to Animoto and their amazing tool and your DNA guide for joining us here, but mostly thank you to you. Thank you. Share this video, will you, with your friends. It's free, and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to tell their unique story. You can find me at genealogygems.com, Diane at yourdnaguide.com, and of course, Animoto at animoto.com. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Experience where they put you in the elevator and you start at ground zero, which is prehistoric times, and you go all the way up. It's almost like a timeline with location. My two favorite things. And I have to say, I was in tears getting to be in it. It was just really cool because I was thinking that it is history, it's people appreciating history, but it was also just a big deal to me to finally be here and to think that genealogy got me here, that I got to tell this story and be in front of it and see it for myself and go, yeah, that's pretty amazing. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, I think, of what technology could do. Everybody is going to have the ability to take people through their own story, and they do a really wonderful job there.
Oh, amazing. Amazing intersection of technology and history.
Yep, I agree. Let's go shopping.
Okay.